We're just going to run through each of them in order that they came up, because we just thought, I mean, for you guys who've made them, it might be interesting to have some feedback. So Look at Me, the first film, about the selfies. So what we really liked about that was that you had an idea about what you wanted to do, a clear idea, and also you had an idea that worked against the grain of the project. So it's kind of easy in a sense to be given a word and go off and make a film that illustrates that word. But it's much more interesting to challenge that idea and go against the easiest option. And the film, although the film had to kind of tell us what it was about, the fact that you had resolved that, the fact that you had found a way to do that in the edit was something that we were impressed by. And although you, in one sense, you kind of missed your main character and realised too late, the fact is you did realise afterwards that you had got her. And from the moment the film starts, you're held by the film. And what the film is saying, I thought, was really interesting about passion for the self and selfies. And I thought you were absolutely right to think that's a weird thing that people do now. And that's really at the heart of documentary, is thinking there is something interesting going on which people haven't seen before or haven't looked at in the right way, and we can say something interesting about that. So that was really impressive. So.
The second film was Obligated to Passion. I really enjoyed this film as well. I loved that you guys came up and were very aware of some of the constraints that you had in the edit. You know, it's so easy to get carried away with a great interview and then you forget about some of the other things that you need to get. I thought the film was what I was trying to say in terms of exploring these different sides of passion and that it's more than just something that you do, it's something that these people dedicate their lives to, and you know, these themes are all quite relevant and I thought really interesting. Obviously, you know, I'm quite sure that as a learning process, if you do it again, you'd go out and get whole lots of coverage and GVs and overlay and all sorts of stuff, and you'd be able to refine the idea even more because you'd be able to cut those interviews down and all that sort of stuff. And that's part of the learning process. And I think what really stood out for me was the idea that you were trying to achieve. I could see that, and the learning process that you clearly went through as a result of some of the mistakes that you made. So, well done for that.
And the third film was The Simple Formula, which was beautifully shot and very nicely edited, and that was striking. It was, you know, it had a kind of look and a coherence, and it was very nicely put together. What I most liked about this film, and the thing that I'll stick with, was not so much the character who would rather curl up with Friday the 13th and his girlfriend, but the fact that when you were talking, you used the puppet. And it was really the only instance in the whole evening where somebody had done something visually quite weird and quite kind of, you know, outside the kind of convention. And it was just great, because in that moment you saw that he's kind of playing to the camera, here's this puppet, but the puppet's kind of expressing his emotion, but in a kind of grotesque fashion, and it was just a really nice bit of cinema, and that was really impressive. So, yeah.
And if I may add to that as
Please.
well, one of the things I really liked about that film, I thought it was beautifully shot and put together as well, and I liked the abstract nature of it, and I would have loved to have not seen anybody's face. I thought that was an interesting theme that you guys were going with, but then you sort of show, I know that you wanted to show that guy, the Friday the 13th guy, and I understand why, but I would have loved to have seen that film without him, or just his eyes, or something, and no face at all. You're going with that quite a lot, and I would have kept that going as a editing motif. So, yeah. The second last film was Just Saying. I thought this was a really nicely shot little portrait of someone who was passionate about their music. I thought it was nicely put together. I thought it was very, as you guys said, it was a very simple idea, and I thought it was well executed. I loved the way that you guys, the look of it, at dusk, you had that dusk feeling about it, and had a really nice aesthetic. and she was a decent character as well. I would have loved to have seen more of the bush guy and him talking about how bored he is of this whole process to contrast her passion. I thought you totally missed a trick. You should have shown that. That would have been really interesting. But otherwise, as a little portrait, I thought it worked really well. And you guys, especially after losing your best interview, don't worry, mate. That is everyone. I've done that. So don't everyone does that. Just when you're getting paid for it, mate. It's even worse. You wouldn't believe it. And so
that's actually, there's a point on that, yeah, which is that when you're recording sound, yeah, you should always use headphones, because you can't do what you did then.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're shooting on DSLR, you should invest in juice links in the box that you stick underneath, and you just have headphones on. It's just a basic thing. So one of the first things you learn when you make film professionally is what goes wrong. You know, you're off recording, you're off in Nigeria, you're doing interviews, you've got all the access, you've seen the picture. What's wrong, of course, is the fucking sound. The sound recorder doesn't know how to do the sound, and you haven't checked it. Yeah?
Yeah.
Famously, sound is what goes wrong. And the truth is, in documentary, you can cope with a lousy picture. You can do stuff, and you can live with it. You cannot show films with bad sound. So it's the absolute essence. So headphones, and just sort that always.
The final film was In the Moment. So this was really nicely shot and nicely put together. It was, I think the strength for me, it had me immediately, because this person who I thought was a bit arrogant, actually, in the way that he said passion, screw that. I thought that was really interesting, especially when he qualified it with it's got to be more than that. And then the film showed this group of people who literally embodied that whole idea. And so the film sort of posed this thesis, so to speak, of this is the way we see passion. It's not just a word, it's something, it's our life. And then we saw them embody it, and I felt it. And I believed them. And I thought it was really nicely explored.
Yeah, no, that's what we both like the fact the film showed you something. The Russian director Kosakovsky, and he's got these 10 rules about documentary, and one of them is, don't tell us something. If you've got something to say, write it. Only film if you've got something to show. And the film showed us something, and that was really good.
And I felt something. I felt it.
Yes, indeed. We felt, yeah. So the truth is that we could have given a prize to any of these films for different aspects. Sorry, yes.
Well, that's exactly right, because you've got to take into consideration a bunch of things. Professionalism, who's made films before, the access is a big factor.
Absolutely.
Huge factor.
Yes, but we were asked to select two. So we picked our two favourites.
The runner-up?
The runner-up is Look at Me, and we chose Look at Me because, for the reasons I said before, really, because it had a really neat idea, and it's a genuinely bizarre thing that people take these selfies all the time now. They didn't used to do it. What's going on? And the fact that you dug into that in 24 hours, and the fact that you found a way to do that using tourists, and that you found your film in the edit, which is anybody who's going to work professionally in film, you've got to be able to save the day in the edit. So we thought that was really impressive.
As Michael said, we could have given this honestly to anyone, because everyone's film had its merits, and for different reasons. They really did. But we've decided to give the prize to In the Moment, because of the very fact that we said it had this strange question posed at the top, and then the film really nicely explored it. And it was very well executed and nicely put together. So congratulations to you guys.